Thank you, Gurkan. So I'll give you a quick walkthrough of all that that you saw in the slide that Gurkan just presented in terms of the full end-to-end capability that we offer on the project operations surface. So I'll start just in the same order that we saw in the slide deck at the sales, pricing, and the proposal creation process around projects, and then move on to the project management, tracking, execution planning, and also eventually to time and expense and resource management, and to the project accounting pieces. So this is really the end-to-end product. It is a product that can really address all questions that every one of those personas that you saw in the previous slides that Gurkan was talking about, and their needs addressed. So starting with the sales team, the capabilities we have is a very detailed sales process. We start all the way from the lead and the opportunity process at that stage of your bid cycle, and we are built on top of Dynamics365 sales. So if you are already using sales, Dynamics365 sales, it should be a pretty easy transition to project operations and the sales extensions around projects. So starting with the opportunity, as you can see on the screen, we have a few concepts here that light it up for the projects world. Basically, you can define who owns this opportunity from which legal entity and which division of your company owns this project opportunity. And that in turn drives a few key financial aspects around how that bid is costed and priced. So those are some of the extensions, but otherwise most of the goodness around relationship insights and tracking the probability of your opportunity are all there. One other key extension in the opportunity area is a way or an ability for you to have itemize your opportunity for the type of project work that you are going to be doing on this. And in addition, each opportunity can have multiple quotations. So it helps build those alternative pricing and planning strategies that best works for the goals of this client or this particular deal. So if you look at the metrics of each of these that we show, for example, here I have two quotes. One where the resourcing model is wholly on-site, and one where it's a mix of on-site and offshore. And the metrics that project operations shows for you is what's the gross margin if I were to have with each of these, and how competitive or how much within the customer expectations of budget and schedule am I going to be. And obviously here the winner is this quote, where we see that the margin is significantly different and it is well within the expectations of the customer's schedule and budget. So if you open up this quote, as you progress through the life cycle of this opportunity or bid, you can get to some key metrics around profitability analysis, how the quote is being built up from the ground up by project operations, leveraging very detailed price lists and the ability to cost based on geography, division, or n number of dimensions that you may have that influence your pricing and costing strategy. So based on that, it's a very, a number that's backed by a lot of configuration and richness here. It could be as simple as you make it, or it could be as complex as your organization desires when it comes to these concepts. In addition to the pricing and costing that's driven based off of your needs, you could also have additional negotiation vectors on your quote, whereby you could say, what components of my quote are going to be chargeable, what components of this quote are going to be non-chargeables. For example, in this quote, I have some fixed price components, and I also have some time and material components. I just click to see what my time and material components are, and there I can see that there are these rows that are chargeable, And I also, by moving into the expenses component, which happens to be going off of the fixed price billing method, I can see what are my expense categories that are chargeable, what are non-chargeable. And at that point, you could just as well say that for this deal, a hotel could be, charges could be non-chargeable. Or similarly, on the roles in the time component, you could go in and say a so-and-so role is going to be non-chargeable, but it's just for this particular proposal that we are giving this this kind of pricing for the customer. And that in turn affects how your quote is built up, right? The value or the quoted amount of that component will change to take into account only non-chargeable, only chargeable values, and those non-chargeable components will be contributing to your cost, and therefore they will impact your margins, so that the person building the quote has an accurate estimate of what their actual margin is going to be. Now, moving on from the quote to the happy path where you win a quote. Of course, if you lose a quote, the quote is lost and the project, backing project, can be closed and is automatically closed by the system. But in the happy path, where you are landing the deal and your bid or proposal is accepted by the customer, the system, when you close this quote as one, the system creates a contract. And in there, I'd like to touch on a few things here in terms of the flexibility that you have with the contracting in project operations. So you could have a contract that has, say, for example, in this example, the contract has only one component, and that component is going to be fully time and material. But there are a few examples of our contracts where, the contract is not as straightforward. It may have, a combination of fixed price and T&M components. And that is something that you can totally set up, all the way from quote to contract, where, going with the previous example, I have some work here, time components that are fixed price, whereas my expense components are actually T&M. So you have a fixed value negotiated with the customer when it comes to the work, but once for travel expenses and such else, you can have a T&M sort of a billing method where you're just billing as you incur your costs. In all of these setup, the project, the project is the front and center of our experiences. We'd like to, keep the project, the project manager in all of our thinking around this, because that is the person that is loaded in most organizations. They have to deliver to the sales team's expectations. They have to deliver to budget. They have to make sure that the right resources are getting utilized. They have to make sure that it's a loaded role. They have to make sure that the work is done, completed on time, customer is happy. So a lot of responsibility resides on that role. So given that every experience is designed to bring the project manager up to speed with what is the latest on this project, because there is a lot of personas interacting with the project, like salespeople, like resource managers, whatever they do, and consultants who are recording time on expenses on a daily basis. And of course, there is project accountants recognizing revenue. Each one of these personas, whatever task they are performing on the project, that always comes back to the project and the PM so that they have visibility into everything. Certain actions and certain processes they should be able to influence, but certain actions and other processes, they may be just on the consuming end of that information. So we have designed it in such a way that the project manager always gets the latest on everything that's happening on their projects, and also is able to influence where they can on the course of the project's execution. So coming to the project entity, basically the project has some of the same notions, basically which legal entity owns this project and which practice unit. For example, in this environment, I have two practice units, robotics and software. So this is a way for me as a PM to say who is the legal entity that owns this company and which practice unit owns. But again, if that has already been decided, as part of your sales process, and if this is a billable project, you want that information to flow. And that automatically flows and keeps the project manager from making any errors to that. And then there is, of course, a detailed calendaring experience where a project can be tied to a certain type of calendar with a certain working hours or schedule, which in turn informs how we plan the project, how the tasks on this project are scheduled. This is a project that is in execution, and I have my task breakdown here. And this is powered by Microsoft Project, in a nod to what Gurkan was mentioning earlier, that this initiative on project operations is about bringing the best of Microsoft's suite of project-based solutions and bringing them all together in a seamless way. Again, it shouldn't be that the user needs to go to Microsoft Project to use this. They are in one surface, and Microsoft Project sort of comes to that surface to deliver the experience that the PM needs when it comes to project planning. So, or if the salesperson would like to leverage the deep sales capabilities and business process, the sales application is there with the required enhancements to deliver the numbers that the salesperson needs to build those proposals to projects. So we've tried to minimize, those jumps for users to get to the best of breed solutions. Our goal or ambition for this product is that the persona that is interacting with any aspect of a project has that information directly available to them when they need it without having to do those hops. So when it comes to project planning, basically we have, Kanban style board views. And these board views, like there is custom based on your user-defined buckets, like I have all tasks, customer-facing tasks, or tasks that require review. It's just very easy drag and drop experience to move things around between buckets. And in addition to the bucket view, we also have the progress view, or the tasks based on finish date, or categorization based on who's assigned to it. So these are a few, and in addition to these, we do have an interactive Gantt. So if I just zoom out there are, these experiences are all interactive. I could extend a task and then influence the dependent tasks. Absolutely, I can do that. So if this task, say, is dependent on the finish of this task, and that task is finishing, needs to finish for this task to start. So if I extend this one, automatically this one moves. And there's also the ability to visualize different aspects of this experience, right? You can visualize milestone tasks, or you can visualize just tasks that, or you can even move tasks along in the timeline to influence the start and end dates. Now, as you are planning these projects, one question that we often get is, what type of scheduling capabilities can we expect in the system? So you have very deep scheduling engine here, and it's going to get even deeper. But you do have a fairly useful system of dependencies as well as constraints. So for example, we have 3 constraints that we support already, and we will support more as we go further. There is the constraint of start no earlier than, and there is another constraint called finish no earlier than, and ASAP, or as soon as possible, that we already support today. And we support, in the dependency area, we support finish to start. This covers most experiences or scheduling needs, but we will go on to enhance these as time goes by. And in terms of giving the project manager that end-to-end view, not just relating to schedule and dates, but rather also to who's available to do this work. Yeah, I did all this plan, that's fine, but who's available to do this work? What type of people do I need? And how much do they cost? Are they even available? So those are few questions that come as soon as you win this project, right? Those are things that are hitting the project manager day in, day out, until they finish this project on time and within budget. So with that, the scheduling experiences or resource scheduling experiences we've got, they are one of the different strengths of our product, and I would say this is one of the strong areas where if I'm trying to staff my project, there are multiple interaction patterns depending on the size of the organization and the processes that they have. The project manager can directly book somebody on their project, and when they're doing that, they are doing that with full visibility on the type of people they have, when they are available, when they are needed, what are their skill sets, and how does that impact the schedule of the project. If I don't find somebody available within the timeline, what do I do? How do I change this? And what is the granularity? As you can see, I have these people that the system brought up for me, and that's entirely taking into account the type of skills, the roles, and what division do they need to belong in order for me to, hit a certain on-site offshore resourcing mix. And it also shows me, okay, in the week of Jan 3rd, I need 32 hours, and these people, all of them have 32 hours in that, or do they not? So it does show me that as compared to the availability required and the availability that each of these people have. Now, if I want to expand the search, I can always, relax some of these filter criteria and put in a better search. So that's one paradigm that exists as a project manager to be able to control what they want. And in addition to this, basically, if they want to restrict or choose from a set of preferred resources, they can do that to influence that search. Now, in larger organizations, the project manager being able to do this may be considered as a violation of the roles and responsibilities or the separation of duties. In those cases, the project manager can submit this to a resource manager. There is a requirement, I need to get this staffed, but I'm not supposed to do it. So I can submit this request to my resource manager, who can then go in and propose resources to me. So those experiences that are resource manager focused are huge, and we have pretty deep capabilities there. Now, the resource manager, the schedule board is really the front and center for the resource manager. They can see the availability of people, what they're occupied on given a certain date, and what is the status or what is their utilization view. So we know that Ashley is working in this spread, in these, in this duration, and I can change this duration. I can change the time scale from weeks to days and see a better, a more granular view, or a less granular view if that's what I'm after. And this schedule board experience is really meant for this resource manager to stay in this product all day. So the area can be expanded. I'll just go full screen here, and I can even expand this to, get more real estate for the resource manager to, that takes the Chrome away, and I can start searching, look at my requirements here and find availability and invoke that search from right here. So the schedule board is really powerful and has a ton of configurability already. So basically these filters or the set of filters that are available for a resource manager are entirely configurable. If there are some custom attributes by which you want to search for your resources, you can, there's enough documentation out there that you can influence this area of the filter pane and include more attributes if you want to search for them. And when you introduce more attributes, you can also prioritize how the resources that conform to those filter criteria are shown on the page for you. So you will be able to influence even the search API, all using very simple fetch XML style syntax, and influence that part of the resource search as well. And just getting out of the full screen here, back to our resource manager experiences. So when the project manager actually submits a resource request, the resource manager has the ability, there's an area meant for the resource manager. They will be able to see the requests in the system and respond to those requests in a prioritized way. And they can also interact with the PM, asking additional questions. So that request and response flow is very available in the product in a very declarative and a rich way. So moving on from the resource management to time and expense. So as these, one thing I'd like to mention here is, as we are winning these quotes and creating these contracts, and as we are creating those projects and tasks, one thing that happens in the background when you are in this integrated mode is all of these projects are automatically getting into finance and operations. So for the project accountant to be aware that these projects are coming and that these projects are in execution, and you know, if there is accounting activity that needs to happen on them, that the project accountant has enough information well in advance before a project's execution starts. So given that, now moving on from the schedule board into, okay, we have staffed this project, we now want our consultants to start recording time on the project, right? So it has a very deep time entry experience, user-friendly, and it's also available on a mobile app. But this is the web experience on time entries. You can either create a time entry manually as a full-time employee, and all of this maps to a team member license. So you can add, you'll have the capability of entering time 5 days, and you can configure what is the start date of a week, what are the working days, what are the non-working days. And in terms of making it easy, if I've done this and I do this every week and I'm working on this project for 6 months, there is a way for the consultant to be able to copy their time entries from a previous week into this week. And there is also, if I'm working on this project, there's a way to get your time entries imported based on your assignments on the project. So if you're assigned to, say, 10 tasks on the project, you could bring all of those resource assignments into your time entries, and you will get automatic time entries created based on your assignment dates. And if you are a company that does not actually do that, you know, additional granular step of being able to go and assign people to specific tasks on the project, you might as well use resource bookings to import your time entries from resource bookings as your source, or even exchange appointments if that's where your consultants typically enter their billable work assignments. So there are these multiple sources and the copy experiences to make the time entry experiences a lot easier. And in addition to time, there are expense entries available, and there is also the rich expense management capabilities that we have in F&O, that you can record an expense to a project operations project, and get that expense into the project manager's view for approval. And then the project manager during the approval has the visibility into whether a certain time entry is violating the not to exceed limits or not. And all those information that a project manager needs in order to approve a time entry are there. So we can potentially just include, maybe create a time entry and approve it for us to be able to see some of that. So let me create an hour or say 5 hours on this project, and submit that to the project manager. So I'm recording some 5 hours time and I'm submitting that. And when I do that in the approvals, now I'm configured to be the approver on this project. But once that is done, on the approvals page, I can see whether that, the not to exceed limit has failed and why it has failed. So it has failed because of the limit set up against the contract. And that doesn't necessarily stop me from approving, but I can also, reject this time entry at this point, saying that it violated the not to exceed limit. So it depends on how you would like to configure that business process. but out of the box, it gives the ability for you to approve that particular time entry, and then either unapprove it later on, or maybe fix your not to exceed limits. So all those interaction patterns. And one thing that I'd like to call out here, which is a very well-loved capability, is for me to be able to say as a PM that yes, the resource submitted 5, but only 3 of those hours I want to charge to the customer. So that's something. So the 5 hours will be treated as cost, but the 3 hours will be billable to your customer. And all of these actuals are recorded in your time and material billing backlog, and even any milestones that you have on your projects are also listed in your fixed price billing backlog. Now, as activity is going on in finance and operations, this activity is being recorded, and we are showing this activity in the form of integration journals. The time that you just approved, that I just approved on a certain project, that gets automatically synced, so I can see that there are some time entries on this fraud analysis at Adventure project. And at this point, the project manager can see that, okay, there was an hour scheduled and booked on this project. This is the cost of it, and then this is the sales amount of that particular time entry. And they have the ability to change the billing sales tax group or the item sales tax group to influence how tax is getting calculated. And then the accountant can then post this such that project revenue can be recorded on the project. So this accounting will ensure that both cost and sales WIP is recorded on the project, and that is in conforming to the rules that you may have had defined in your project cost and revenue profile rules, where how you want to account for costs, whether you want sales WIP or not. All of that capability is driven by these project cost and revenue profile rules that either apply to a specific contract or a specific group of projects or a specific project. So if I go back, each of these rules has those settings to say where do your costs post to for time, where do your costs post to for items or material expenses, and your on account invoicing. So all of that is entirely configurable. And if you are invoicing, those invoices that you generate for your customers, those invoices also are syncing to finance and operations. So if I open any of these project invoices, you have the ability, when the invoice is created, the project manager and the project accountant both have visibility to the invoice. So I can look at my invoice that came in for a certain project as an accountant. I can decide how that invoice is going to get printed, and I can do that kind of an interaction with the invoice as an accountant. But also as a PM, I can look to see what invoices, what are my invoices that are available. What is, how do I, if I go back to my T&M billing backlog, and if I say, okay, I see some that are committed, that is, they did not fail the not to exceed validation, so I can mark them as ready to invoice. And then I could go to my project contract and then go to the specific contract here, where I have this billing backlog approved for invoicing, and I can elect to create an invoice. So at the moment I create an invoice, or when the invoice can be automatically created as well. But when the invoice gets created, as a PM, I can go in and adjust the quantities one more time. I have that ability to do that to ensure that me and my customer are on the same page. So I can go in, open up these T&M line that I've got on this invoice and see what is getting invoiced. So I have visibility as a PM to see what is getting invoiced. I can change the quantities. And at some point when I feel all the right charges are included on this invoice, I can then go in and confirm this invoice. That then makes that invoice available for the accountant in project accounting module of project operations. So let me go ahead, confirm this invoice, this Y4RMM5, and then we can go to finance and operations. Once that gets confirmed, you can go over to the invoicing screen, project invoice proposals, so that I can then, yeah, you can see that Y4R5M5 invoice is available, but the amount is not yet come through. So if you give that a few minutes, you'll see that that invoice has come into finance and operations for the project accountant, then to be able to change the layouts, maybe change the sales tax information so that, you know, the invoice, the charges are correct. The project managers has approved those charges, but then we also need to ensure for the timely invoicing to happen that the details around the format and the layout of the invoice are also available. So let me go back here and see this invoice. Yeah, this invoice has been confirmed. Let's run that batch process to make sure that we have the flow from CE to F&O working. And then we can just go back to our invoice proposals. And there we go, the charges have come in. So now I can open this invoice as an accountant and I can see that that charge has come in. I still have the ability, you know, to edit the sales tax group, but more importantly, as an accountant, I can, you know, leverage the well-loved print management infrastructure in F&O to you know, set up overrides to a default layout. And as you can see, you know, you have the ability to decide an invoice format for that customer, or for that particular contract, or for that specific invoice. You can have a different layout if that's your requirement. But this is a very powerful feature that allows you to format the invoice proposal any way you see fit for your customers. So coming to revenue recognition, we have a full blown revenue recognition that is completely IFRS compliant. So when you go to a fixed price project, you have the estimates experience here where you can see, so let me select one of those which I have already posted an estimate for. So it brings in those transactions as they are flowing in from you know, all the activity that the consultants are doing on the project. All those are getting synced, including your initial estimate, right? So those are coming in on my project. I've had, let's say if you go back to your project, you have done your estimation on the project. So I open our production design, which is our fixed price project. That is, it is going based off of fixed price. These estimates that you have done on the project, they have also been synced to F&O so that F&O knows what the, you know, what the cost estimates are. And based on those estimates or the forecast model, then you can, based off of what percentage you are complete, which is also something that you can, you know, leverage multiple methods to calculate your percent complete. So as I'm creating a new estimate, we have in very highly configurable methods to calculate percent complete, and also to use what is remaining to be completed, and based on that your revenue is recognized. So all of those are taking into account, you know, the functionality that's very familiar to project management and accounting users, to be able to define how you want to calculate your percent complete for revenue recognition purposes. And this can be the same as what you track on your project. So it could come from WBS or the project manager's tracking of effort, but it could just as well be configured or edited manually by the accountant if there are certain nuances to that percent complete. So it's really, you know, all the way from sales to the final posted ledger entries to for your in-process transactions like time and expense, all the way to actually the holy grail of recognizing revenue. It's that end-to-end solution that caters to different personas that interact with projects. And as we go, this will get way more powerful. And